I'm Kevin Jones from Democratic Services at Kingston. The first order of business today is the election of the chair for the next year. I have one nomination, that's Ash Ali. Do we have any other nominations? Ash, you want to make a nomination? You're on mute.
No, sorry, apologies. Sorry, no.
Can I have a seconder from a member of the committee, please? Lorraine has seconded you. Is anybody against, or can I take it as unanimous? We have none against. Ash, you're back in the chair. Congratulations.
Okay, as was ringing out among the crowds a couple of Tuesdays ago, here's to 4 more years. Hopefully better intended and with more ethics. Okay, so the next, thank you all and welcome all to the second schools forum of the term. This one is focused specifically on some of the recoups that we've got in there. But before we do that, just in terms of elections, we do have to elect the vice chairs. So Kevin, is that me that does that, or is that yourself?
That is you.
Fantastic. So earlier today, Rachel Severett-Nye, our esteemed head at Tolworth, has said that she is willing to continue the co-chair. Is there anyone else that wishes to stand other than Rachel? And also Esther, I made an assumption that you're okay with that, and she's nodding there. Good. Is there anyone else that wishes to stand for co-chair? Please raise your hand. Okay, so starting first with Rachel. So can I have a seconder for Rachel, please? Thank you, Sam. Oh, Ben. Okay, Ben. So there, and then a seconder, Sam, for Esther. Oh, not Sam. Sorry, that was rather fait accompli. A seconder for Esther, please. Ah, Sam. Excellent. Thank you very much. So congratulations, Rachel and Esther. We get to do this for another 4 years and hopefully be custodians of the taxpayers' purse for a while longer. So that takes us on to introductions and to apologies. I don't think we've got anyone new on the call, have we, Kevin?
Not that I'm aware of.
Welcome everyone to this. In terms of apologies, Kevin, any apologies?
We have apologies from Gareth Dutton, from Esther Brooks, and from Hazel Moody today.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And then third item there is around membership. Have we any memberships that finished today that you and I haven't already spoken of, Kevin, that I'll talk to people about?
Chair, we've got Ian Hutchings we need to approve today for a further period. Charlie Fenter, Carol Buchanan, and Siobhan Lowe, we need to renew their memberships.
Carol Buchanan,
Charlie Fenter,
yeah,
and Siobhan Lowe.
Okay, so what we've got is we've got 2 of those people on this call. So the other 2 people, if we can postpone and ask that separately. Ian, are you still wishing to continue to be a member of Schools Forum? Ian Hutchins, Kings Oak?
Yeah, that's all good with me, thank you.
I'm sure you're glad that I reminded you what school that you work at then as well. Sorry, Ian.
Thank you.
So that just carries on then, Kevin. I don't think that's voted on, is it, for the members?
If any members have got any objection, otherwise we carry on.
Any objections with Ian? And then Carol, are you still happy to continue to be a member of Schools Forum?
Yes, that's fine. I'm sorry, my video seems to be going off and on. Can you hear me though?
We can hear you perfectly.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm happy to continue. Yes.
Fantastic, and we're happy to have you carry on. Is there anyone with any objections to Carol? No. Excellent. So we are core. I'll take the action specifically around Charlie and Siobhan. Diane.
Thank you very much. I am Diane. I'm here as portfolio holder for Children's Services, and as such, I don't sit on this forum, and I'm only coming to observe and to listen with Ash's permission, which I think you granted via Lucy a little while ago. So if that's okay, I'll just sit quietly and hear what everybody has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you for giving up the time to come and observe as well. It's really appreciated. Okay, so we agree for Carol and Ian to come on. Charlie and Siobhan, I will speak to in the next couple of days and get their agreement and send that to you, Kevin. Okay, that's the exciting bit over, everyone. Any declarations of interest? No more different to there. Minutes of the last meeting. They were shared, and Kevin very kindly shared them in due course. Does anyone have any queries, questions, challenges, or builds for the minutes of the last meeting on the 20th, or indeed the 14th of October, 2024? Okay, and the actions covered and the actions gone forward in there are covered either in this item, in this meeting, or indeed in the others. That takes us then, Scott, please, to the Kingston Schools High Need Block.
Yes, thanks, Ash. This will be a bit of a double act between myself and Charis. So Charis will chime in with some of the information. So Esther Brooks and Sophie Kavanagh were re-elected as the chair and vice chair of the High Needs subgroup for Kingston, which was good news. The ICB weren't available to attend, but the AFC colleagues presented a timeline of the OT and SALT therapy review, and questions were passed on to the ICB, and we'll have more information at the next forum that will come to the next High Needs subgroup with further information around that. I presented the Q2 safety valve report, which is now superseded by item 6 in this agenda, so I won't go through the information in too much depth here. The overspend is actually very similar to what I'm about to present in item 6. We've also discussed the setting up of the SRP task and finish group, which we discussed at Schools Forum previously, and we have a update on the cluster model. I think Charis might want to give some update around the cluster model now.
Yeah, can you hear me? Good.
Yeah.
Terrible problem with my mic today. So in terms of the High Needs subgroup activity to take the cluster pilot forward, it's been agreed that we'll take one cluster pilot forward from starting its activity from the beginning of the summer term 2025. So between now and then, we've established a working group which has Sophie will chair it from the High Needs subgroup. Esther Brooke will attend the first meeting for continuity, and then we have 3 primary reps, probably 2, but 2 from one school, so from St Andrews and St Mark's and Grand Avenue, and we have Emily Barnes representing secondary schools. From AFC, we've got Rebecca Williamson, a senior EP, Megan to help with project support, and myself. So we've a meeting shortly, and the key things we need to do within this are to establish the process for recruiting the cluster lead, who will then take on the running, the organisation, some of the work that needs to happen for it. So that working group will need to get the advert out in the process for doing that. They will also need to support the process of deciding which cluster locality and its composition, so that we can then begin the preparatory work in the spring term. And part of the work that we want to do between now and then, particularly with Rebecca, who's one of the EPs, is to think about the evaluation, the impact, the success criteria that we want from that pilot. So if we're doing it for a year and we're investing 100,000 of our funding, what do we want that pilot to evaluate? What will success look like? How will we know if it's been worth doing, if it's something that, is it about saving money, is it about reducing EHC plans, is it about outcomes, is it about parental confidence? So really thinking about that process, and the reporting back and the accountability is through this, the High Needs subgroup reporting back here, but also the primary and the secondary reps reporting back to their own meetings, so that there is learning across the wider system as well as just the cluster pilot. So we have now got the working group members up and running, and we'll have the first meeting. So there is a bit of activity finally moving forward rather than just something that we thought we'd like to do. We agreed that we would fund between now and actually it'll be January when we appoint them, but January and March, the cluster lead will be funded. We'll find that within the high needs. And then from April, when they're appointed and we take things forward, we've got that targeted amount of money for the cluster. So happy to have any questions, or anyone wants to know more, or anyone's really excited to be a volunteer. We've probably got probably enough head teacher, but there's always room for more if someone's really interested. Any questions?
Charis.
Actually, Ash, could I say one more thing? Is that all right? We're just keen. So initially, I didn't come to the last High Needs subgroup, but there were quite a lot of actions sort of coming my way. And I suppose I've met Sophie and Esther a couple of times, just to be clear that this is very much not an AFC-led project, and I think that's really important. It's not just a continuation of SEN service doing things to, within the local area. I think it's really important that we frame it within the schools forum and the high needs subgroup, and a piece of, I suppose, co-productive work that we're doing together to look at systemic change rather than something that's led by AFC, which was my reluctance initially, but we've worked that out. And by the structure we've put in for the working group and the head's representative, it feels much more aligned. It has to be aligned to the SEN statutory stuff, but I think it's very much a project that schools are leading and taking forward and are interested in owning themselves.
Thank you, Charis. Councillor Shaper.
Oh, hello. Thanks. Thank you so much, Gareth. Just a quick question. Will that part of the working groups, that kind of overarching sort of plan, like the vision, the objectives, is that part of what the work you're doing, or has that kind of already been done? Or are there maybe a handful of minimum 3, maximum 5 key objectives that you'd want to see over a sort of 12-month timeline? Is that how specific you want to be at this stage, or is it more about sort of engagement and feedback first of all?
So what the cluster pilot has been discussed kind of, and the model that we wanted to take forward. And I think then we will revisit, because we have talked about this for quite a long time. We will revisit and look at some of the outcomes and activity that we want to, I suppose, evidence and research as a result of doing this. And that's why having an educational psychologist as part of the group is helpful, because she is very rooted in evidence-based research and practice. So she is going to be working with us to think about what we want to test out, what we want to know at the end of the year's investment in terms of success, and that the notes from that working group will come back here, including the kind of terms of reference and the agreed outcomes that we get to. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, thank you, Charis. I think it's probably before my time a little bit on the early development of it, as to, I see which area it sits in. It's more about what the overarching goal, if you like, behind the development.
Well, I hope, yeah, I mean, I think
take that off time probably. I didn't want to take up too much time.
When we've agreed the terms of reference for the working group, they will definitely be shared as part of the high needs subgroup. So that would probably give you the information that I think kind of help you feel that you're up to speed with where we are and what it's all about. Good.
Thank you, Charis.
Thanks, Charis. Just one question for me, and then if anyone else has any other questions. In terms of the recruitment process for that lead, would you just spend sort of 15 seconds talking us through that, if that's okay?
Yes, so we've got a draft job description, which we based on a couple of the local areas who had already started it. So that's part of the first working group, task and finish group, to agree that job description. Then the request is that role is an AFC role rather than on the role of any particular school, because the cluster might change. That's what was agreed. We will then need to have it evaluated once we've agreed the job description. And then the idea was that we've got a couple of dates in early January to complete the recruitment process. It's a very clear expectation that it's somebody impartial without any knowledge or current links or kind of conflict of interest within Kingston primary or secondary schools. So I would imagine there'll be a smaller couple within the working group that will be part of that panel for the recruitment process. Is that what you wanted to know, Ash? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was just having, and I know most of it, as we said in the last meeting, needs to be at the other group. So I just wanted to check in.
Yeah, I think it's probably, although it wasn't quite what we had in mind, but I think it probably is better to run it as an AFC central role rather than on, again, if you've got it on someone's school role, you get that challenge about impartiality and all sorts of things, don't you? So it's probably the best way to do it. And I'm hoping, I think it's a very exciting role for somebody, to take on. And certainly when we've had conversations with previous local areas that have done it, they've had a good response to it. So hopefully it's the same.
Fingers crossed. Any more questions for Charis or Scott on the high needs block update? Okay, thanks everyone. So that takes us now to the 24-25 finance update. There's no votes on this. These are notes, not votes. So Scott, is that you presenting on that, or is that you, Rachel? Sorry.
Yeah, still me, Ash.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see that. It might be a little bit easier to go through this. Ash is correct. We just have two things that schools forum need to note within this report as per usual. So the first one is that we need schools forum to note the latest DSG allocation for 2024-25. And the second is that we need schools forum to note the projected DSG outturn position for 24-25. So the allocation remains unchanged from last schools forum at 188.074 million before recruitment. We talked about this earlier with Ash in the pre-meet. This is likely to change in December. So the ESFA update based off certain points in the year. December is the usual update, and it's due to imports exports. We've been doing some work behind the scenes where we go through every education, health and care plan and ensure that the ESFA have the right local authority assigned to each young person. We found a few errors, and we've successfully negotiated that with the ESFA, and we'll be getting some funding back from other local authorities. That's factored into the outturn position already, so it won't improve our position, but it's already built in to the outturn position. So when our allocation changes for the better in December, we've already got that allocated. As I said, the second thing we need to note is this funding position. So we are projecting to be 7.24 million overspent in the DSG in 2024-25. 7.651 million of that is down to the high needs block. It leaves us with a cumulative overspend at the end of this financial year of 7.920 million. It's only a £5,000 difference compared to information that we presented to schools forum in September. So essentially exactly the same position that we put in the original Q2 safety valve as well that went to the ESFA. Unfortunately, this means we're 5.737 million over the target for the safety valve. There's a number of reasons that I report each time to schools forum, and those reasons remain unchanged. We've received an advance of the safety valve. The ESFA have given us money that was due this financial year, but they've given it over several financial years in advance. We were told to project an 8% increase on the base when we submitted the safety valve back in 2018. Those haven't come to fruition. They've been significantly lower, particularly this year it's 3%. 2025-26, we highlighted the ESFA when the safety valve was submitted that was going to be a very challenging year for Kingston, and we would not be able to balance position. The ESFA informed us that they would revisit that nearer the time. They're yet to do so, and EHCP numbers have increased quicker than we had anticipated back in 2018. I think the other thing I'd like to note while I've got the floor here, it's not relevant for 2024-25, but it will be something that we need to discuss. It's around 2025-26 budget is the £1 billion, that's been earmarked for the high needs block next financial year. I think we need to have a little bit of discussion around that. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly on a different.
Just just for accuracy, you mean the £1 billion promised by Rachel Reeves 2 weeks ago, not £1 billion that we're getting at Kingston? Yeah?
No, correct, Ash. Yes.
Just checking. Just
Thank
hoping.
you for clarifying. Yeah.
I was hoping.
So Ash is correct. The £1 billion that's been earmarked. So 2.3 billion overall, 1 billion for high needs block specifically, 1.3 billion sits within the schools block allocation. We're yet to actually see how that affects Kingston. The SFA have not released those allocations for 2025-26. They've just given us an assumption that we will get between 7 and 10% increase on the base. Kingston, we always get the lowest, so we've assumed 7%. We've never received higher than the lowest amount that the SFA offer. There's a couple of considerations we need to take into account with this £1 billion. That £1 billion is not new money. Around 400 million was already earmarked for increases. That 3% that we've already been discussed, that was already benchmarked into and baselined into our reporting. So that 3% would have seen an increase in 2025-26 of around 889,000. With the additional money that the ESFA have suggested for 2025-26, that increase goes up to 2.074 million. So a change of 1.85 million, which is welcome. Unfortunately, what happens is we ESFA have then told us to assume it goes back to 3% increases from 2026-27 onwards. Obviously, we already had that factored in to our 5-year projections, those 3% increases. So it makes very little difference in the coming years, with the exception of 2025-26, an increase of 35,000, 36,000, 37,000, 38,000. The reasons for those differences is because our baseline is slightly higher because of the 2025-26 increase in amount. So overall, the cumulative increase is around 1.334 million, which is welcome. But when we look at the projected forecast, before this new money, we were projecting a 36.325 million overspend cumulative by 2028-29. This reduces down to 35.029 million. So when the numbers become as massive as we have in Kingston, it makes little difference to the 5-year projection. I met with the ESFA today and discussed some of this. With a lot of local authorities. We all met with them today, and we talked about this. They don't actually know the percentage uplift that will be post 2025-26, but they've told all safety valve local authorities to assume this 3% uplift. So they don't actually know that it will be 3%. That's just what they're assuming. There'll be a multi-year budget review coming soon. So that we'll hopefully know more information. I also want to just add, these are my assumptions of the increase in the high needs block. We haven't actually been told what the increases actually are yet. We haven't been given those allocations. And this assumes I'm comparing apples with apples here, crucially, because I've not changed the population, because the population will obviously change, hopefully going up. But in recent years, it's been teetering on the edge and sometimes going down in Kingston. And I've assumed any other variables have stayed the same: imports, exports, special school numbers, etc., which obviously will also change. But I think it's key to just temper expectations in this meeting, that £1 billion will not solve our overspend. So if I go back to the other report, first of all, does anyone have any questions around the £1 billion?
Ian has a question.
Thanks for that, Scott. Really interesting to have sight of that. Let's say, for instance, I don't know if you've worked it through, that if Labour were to continue to commit to, say, £1 billion next year and £1 billion the year after, what that would then look like, because it looks like that the run rate that we have currently would still be left with a significant deficit. Do you know what the sort of the upside is? About £1 million per year, was it? I think the upside was about £1 million per year, a best case scenario.
Yeah, that's correct, Ian. So I haven't done that numbers of 7% year on year. We need around 27% uplift to break even at current rates. We're about just over 7 million or 7.7 million overspent in year. So it's around a 26-27% increase year on year for us to be a break even point. So as we said, although this 7% is welcome, it doesn't go anywhere near to solving our problem in Kingston. It's something I can certainly model very easily if that's information we would like to see.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Ian. Any other questions? And I can't see the screen, so if you are raising your hand, please raise it on things, because obviously with Scott presenting, I can't quite see. Okay, Scott, anything else on this? Are you carrying on with this?
Yeah, so the only thing we need to do now, unless anyone has any questions going back to this report, is that we just need to make sure that we're noting those positions that we've stated, the 188.074 million allocation and the 7.970 million cumulative overspend, of which 7.242 million is this financial year.
Does anyone have any issue on noting those? I don't think so. And any further questions? I've got a couple, Scott Shock. So on the imports exports, on the post 16, and by imports exports I assume you mean in borough, out of borough, it's saying 2.8 million that we're spending on top up for out of borough for those 191 kids. What work are we doing to try and reduce that in terms of EHCP checking and things?
So actually, sometimes that when we have young people going out borough, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're more expensive.
Right, okay.
Those placements. The imports exports deals with the young people that are Surrey young people that go to our schools, and the £6,000 essentially that we need to receive for that. So it depends on. We are a net exporter in Kingston. We have more young people in Kingston that go to other local authority schools than kids from other local authorities coming to our schools. Now, the reason behind that potentially is twofold. Number one, we don't have enough places in borough. And number two, the places that we do have, we're successfully having Kingston young people go to those places, which means we have less coming in from other local authorities. There is some analysis that we can continue to do around these post-16 places and whether there is value for money in having these out borough places compared to having in borough places. But most of the time, I suspect, is because we don't have the in borough places to offer. So we use the other local authorities to supplement those places. And it's better than being an independent sector.
Thank you, Scott. That's really helpful. Councillor Shaver.
Just a really quick question. Thanks, Scott. I don't know whether this directly relates to the table, but it was just the point about in the report about pupils under the age of 16. I was just interested to see, would you say that that's roughly a 7.5% increase on last year in terms of number of top-ups, whether you think that might be one of the fastest growth areas? Because clearly you're looking at about 3.5% on your original table about that overall overspend, the rate of overspend year on year. But I was interested to see whether you think is that 500,000 a bit of a safety net that we have given in terms of future demand figure. Do you think that is there any flexibility on that 500k? Because I'm just seeing it, obviously 7.5% increase could be one of the fastest increases we've seen rather than the largest. But I thought I'd be interested to see what you thought of that. Thanks.
Yeah, so the future demand allowance, it starts at 1.5 million. We calculate it every year. And essentially what I do is I look at how many EHCPs I'm anticipating to be new in that year. That future demand does not take into account young people moving from a mainstream place to an independent place or from a mainstream place into a special school place. It's just for new EHCPs. We reduce that down month on month, depending on what the situation is looking like within the borough. This time last year, we only had 200,000 of that future demand left. So actually, we're in a positive position compared to the last financial year. One of the few positives, unfortunately, when we look at the large overspend numbers. So I think it's a really good point that I think we're getting better at allowing and calculating that future demand amount that we need each year. I think we're getting better and better at that moving forward, and hopefully that'll be reflected here. What I would want to touch on is not quite your question, but the independent places, I think, is an interesting area to be looking at. So I've stopped sharing my screen now, but on page B6 of the report, we've shown a decrease of 221 down to 183 independent places. And actually, the spend in independent sector is actually less than we were spending last year. Now, partly that because we've got less young people at independent places, but it's also the average cost is sort of roughly the same. So actually, I think we're doing a really good job, and Charis's team is doing a really good job in stemming the flow of those independent places. And actually, although EHCP numbers continue to grow, the percentage that are in the independent sector actually is getting lower. I think that's quite a crucial point to make. We've still got more financial year to go, and there might be more independent places that are in the pipeline that hopefully will be mopped up by that future demand amount of 500,000. But I think it's quite an interesting way of looking at it. I think that it's good to know that the independent places are slowing down, although EHCP numbers are not.
Yes, absolutely. That was put much better than I would have said. But no, absolutely, because it's sometimes about the pace of growth, as you know, trying to anticipate actually even in year, but from year to year, what the pace of growth is, you know, whether you see any changes month on month, you know, or do you take a sort of last 6 months or last 12 months, but actually something can move quite fast during the year, maybe. I don't know whether there are seasonal changes. I'm not that expert on that, but I'd be interested to see how you interpret that going forward, you know, how you anticipate growth. Thank you.
Thanks both. Charis?
We do analyse the EHC needs assessments we get on a monthly basis, and you're right, there are months that are particularly busy months, and I would say this term has seen a very, very significant increase in requests, particularly from primary. It's very high at the moment. I just wanted to come back to the point about more children being local and not in the independent sector. I would say that a big contributor to that is the Orchard Hill schools that we have, and the special schools we have in Kingston have been so creative and helpful. St Philip's, Dysart, in actually expanding and being, you know, almost bursting at the seams, but to keep children as local as we possibly can. So yeah, we do a lot of work in the SEND service, but they are really, really helping as much as they possibly can, and that makes a really big difference.
Thanks, Charis. Any final questions on that item from Scott? Ben, is that a hand or just a...
It was just a thumbs up as an acknowledgement of Charis's kind words.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Charis. So then, for the purpose of the minutes, then the forum notes the latest DSG allocation for the financial year, and note the projected DSG outturn position for the 24-25 year. That takes us to the sort of meaty part of this in terms of the votes, which is the budget update 25-26.
Hi.
Is that you again? Oh,
no, that's me.
Sorry, Mel.
No, that's fine. Hi, everyone. I'm Mel from the Schools Finance team at AFC, and I'm presenting the report on the 25-26 budget that you can find on page C1 in the report pack. The purpose of the report today is to update Schools Forum on the indicative position of 25-26 DSG, which is a little bit difficult at the moment without too many announcements regarding that, but we'll do the best we can. And then there are some decisions to be taken as we go through this report as well on the following: on the minimum funding guarantee level, the level of the lump sum fund, and an exceptional item regarding Tolworth Recreation Centre. Those are in the schools block formula. To agree the level of the growth fund budget for 25-26, to agree whether or not to transfer up to 0.5% of the schools block for borough-wide priorities, to agree whether or not to implement a fall enrolls fund for 25-26, and to consider a request from the National Education Union to fund trade union facilities time at the end of the report. So it's important to note that there have been delays in the national funding formula allocations this year due to the changing government earlier in the year. So we've had much less information than we normally would do at this time, but it is starting to trickle through now, and we are getting updates with promises that we'll have the allocations in December. In the meantime, we did consult, following the last schools forum, we've consulted with schools on these schools block items, so we'll go through each one in turn and have a look at what the consultation results were before having a discussion and voting on those.
Melanie, can I just interrupt before that as a bit of a précis in principle? So these are the consultation results, but I'm not sure that they're representative samples of the thoughts of heads. So there were, I believe, 12 primary school respondents and only 2 secondary school respondents. So while of course we need to be guided by that consultation, I think it's important that we still make the decision this evening, which may or may not go with those. Secondly, you know, colleagues, we need to put our money where our mouth is and make sure that we're actually completing those consultations. And thirdly, though, we do need to make sure that we perhaps look at the timing of those, because they did come out at a time of end of a long half term where everyone's knackered as well. Nonetheless, we agreed that, but on reflection, that might be something to look at for the timing. So I think for the purposes of this, often we go through these and say it's a bit of a fait accompli based on the consultation responses. That may not be the case today, but we'll frame it like that. Sorry to interrupt you, Mel, in that one.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. And I think it was 16 responses, 14 primaries, two secondaries, but still very low, very low. And yes, we can look at those timings and things going forward, definitely. But we can.
But again, that's not on you guys. We agreed those timings, so that's not me saying bad AFC. That's me saying on reflection, we should have thought about the fact that it was the end of October half term.
Thank you. And another thing to highlight there, I guess, is that we were, without the DfE announcements and allocations, we were sort of consulting on basing on last year as much as possible. So where the schools have voted, they've sort of voted in principle, but obviously things may change when we get the final numbers. So if we look at the minimum funding guarantee first, now this has changed. Scott and myself had an update from the DfE today that confirmed that what we've actually consulted on is different to last year. So we consulted on a minimum funding guarantee at either 0% or positive 0.5%. The DfE did announce today that it will be 0% or negative 0.5%. So that is a difference before we even look at the results. But if we just have a look at the results on page C29, of the 16 respondents, 62% were in favour of the positive 0.5%, which is no longer an option. But with the information we've got based on the latest data available, no schools would be impacted at 0% or minus 0.5%. So we would recommend to go with 0% because that's closest to what the majority of the respondents to the consultation went with on that one.
So if we do them bit by bit while the information's in our head, I think that'd be better. So we are saying, as a result of the changes to the MFG, as a result of the DfE, oh god, now it sounds like Eminem. What we're saying is, colleagues voted for the higher one, so the higher one here is 0%. So I suppose my question is, has anyone got anything they wish to say on that specifically before we then go to a vote, with the key principle being it doesn't affect anyone, so we go with the principle on the consultation of the higher. Any queries on that? Okay, so everyone in favour of keeping it in line with the consultation of the higher one at 0%, which means it's in line with the consultation, please, on the computer thing, raise your hands. The computer thing. I was an advanced skills teacher for new technologies across Kingston in 2004, but there we are. Okay, Kevin?
Chair, can I ask that you ask who's against, because I'm
okay, fantastic. I'm happier to go that way. That's always better. Everyone, please lower your hands. Sorry. Anyone against? Unanimous, Kev.
And any abstentions?
Any abstentions? Sorry.
So it's unanimous. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And thank you, Scott and Mel, for the update since our meeting this morning. It's helpful. Okay, Mel, on to the next one, please.
The lump sums next. Yeah. Thanks, Ash. So this one has also changed since we consulted, and we had an update again today. So what we originally consulted on, we gave 2 options to schools, and that was reducing, and again we based it on 24-25 figures, but by reducing by the minimum amount of 10%, which would have brought it in at 140,850. Or the other option was to bring it in line with the national funding formula, and we gave them 24-25 level, which was 134,000, so significantly lower than where it was in 24-25. The results of the consultation were 81% were in favour of the 10% decrease, so sort of a less decrease from the higher value. However, the new national funding formula level is set at 146,000. So it's higher than what they were voting for. It's closer to the 24-25 figure, and that's the only option that we can go with here. So we either had to bring it at least 10% in line or the same as the NFF. So it will be the same as the NFF, which is about probably 5% closer.
And that's the 145,100 in line with the NFF.
Yes, yes. Sorry, I should have given that figure. Yes.
No, I just quickly did the calculations. No, so, I mean, there's not really a vote here, is there?
No, because it has to be set at the national funding formula, which is about approximately 5% closer.
So, does anyone have any questions? Or sorry, Scott, go.
We still need to vote, but unfortunately, it's one of those type of DFE type of votes where you don't have a choice.
Okay. Can I ask for anyone against the thing that we have no choice but to do, to please raise your hand now if you are against? Okay. Anyone abstaining? Oh, thank you, Sally. So one abstainer, and then please raise your hand now that we do have someone abstaining if you are for going with 145,100.
Thank you, Chair. That's one abstention and one abstention.
Yeah, I counted it at 11, Kevin, as I was doing that there, but we'll see. No worries, Ben. Thank you. Okay.
It was Sally Berlamont. Thank you.
Yeah, one abstention. Next one, Mel.
Thank you. So the next item is the exceptional formula item, which members of the forum might be familiar with from previous years. In Kingston, we have this arrangement with Tolworth Recreation Centre, and the funding is top sliced, or has been in the past, agreed via disapplication and agreement of Secretary of State to fund. It used to be 58,000. I think it's now 69,400. Towards the Tolworth Recreation Centre for Tolworth Girls. We consulted on this, and just over 80% of the respondents voted either no or not sure, leaving just under 20% that were in favour. So largely against this, which follows the trend of previous years. We have had to send the disapplication request ahead of Schools Forum because the deadline was on Monday. So we've submitted that, and we will update them with what Forum decides today as well.
Is everyone happy with what that is in terms of, or need any further explanation on that? Because it is a historical. I think the falling roll one's coming after Sally. Am I right there, Mel?
Yeah, coming up.
Absolutely. I just don't think it's in the same line, Sal, on that one. So going back to the question around the Tolworth thing then, so the vote is whether we want to say no and disapply again. I think that'll be 2 or 3 years now in a row, won't it, that we've done that, or whether we want to abstain or whether we want to agree it. So all those in favour of saying no and going for the disapplication, please raise your hands. Thank you. Anyone abstaining from that?
We have 12. It's unanimous.
We've got everyone. Okay, perfect. So we've got them. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Now on to the next one.
Thank you. So the next one, Schools Forum were asked to approve a budget of 200,000 for the growth fund in 25-26. All LAs are required to set a growth fund. This led to many questions with schools, I think, in the consultation regarding, obviously, we've got the growth fund on one hand and the falling roles fund on the other, which seem obviously quite opposing. It's because in secondary schools there is still growth, so we are still seeing a need there. Plus, it's a DFE requirement that all LAs do have to have a growth fund. Any underspend on the growth fund will be redistributed to schools at the end of the year. The level we've consulted on with schools was 200,000. This is the same as the previous year and is based on a breakdown of 100,000 would be for a bulge classes, 40,000 allocated for protection funding. And then there's a 60,000 contingency built in there for anything that is unknown at the moment with the current data. So we consulted schools on that. The response to the growth fund was a majority of 62% of those 16 respondents voted in favour of setting it at the 200,000. So we would ask Forum to discuss and agree whether they're happy with that level, but we will need to set a growth fund.
Okay, colleagues, any questions or thoughts on that? Again, mindful of the low uptake on the consultation. Okay, so I think what we can do is rule out the 250 and the no falling roles fund based on the consultation. If anyone has any issues with that, please let me know. And then go to its.
Sorry, this is the growth fund we're talking about, not the falling roles.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one, so I'm an idiot. So which vote do we want to do based on that? And just go straight to, do we agree the majority of the 200? We're happy with that? Okay, so the vote therefore is anyone for going with the consultation for the growth fund in line with last year at 200,000, please raise your hands. You got those, Kev?
I've only got 11 people. I'm just trying to see who I'm missing.
I think there may be one abstention. So if you let everyone.
Okay, we have one. Okay, thank you. That's 11.
And then everyone drop in hands, please. Anyone? Oh, and Ben's left the call as well. Anyone abstaining? And anyone against that? Excellent.
Against.
Excellent.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
It's carried.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Next one, please, Mel.
Thank you. So the next item that we consulted on and we're asking Forum to vote on today is whether they wish to transfer the maximum of 0.5% of funding from the schools block to other blocks to support high needs pressures. In the consultation, we've based this on last year's figures, as with everything else. So we currently estimated this value as 43,000. So I think it's important to recognise that we're sort of asking to agree that sort of level. And obviously, when we get the actual allocations and things, if that's going to be wildly different, then we've only agreed at 43,000. So the results to the consultation the question was, should the maximum 0.5% transfer be made to support high needs pressures? And we had 87% vote yes, with 12% no, and no one voted no, not sure on that one.
Okay, so any queries, questions, thoughts on that before we go to a vote? Okay, so those willing and in favour of the 87.5% consultation of saying that we should transfer not the 0.5%, but whatever the equivalent of 43,000 is based on how the NFF changes. So the vote was pro 43,000. So should it, change, it'd still be 43,000. It won't change based on the NFF. So all those in favour of that amount and doing it, please raise your hands.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the complex way in which I said it, but I think it's just that. Scott and Mel, will you update us and update forum possibly ahead of the next forum with that and any other impact that the change in the NFF will have, and what percentage that when it comes in at 0.39 or whatever?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll definitely update on that one.
Okay, next up, 1.5, the Falling Rolls Fund.
So now, yes, the Falling Rolls Fund. So a familiar topic, we've consulted and agreed on the Falling Rolls Fund for the current year, but this consultation was asking about a Falling Rolls Fund in 25-26. So we suggested the criteria remain the same because there's been a lot of discussion around that recently, if a fund were to be set up. However, the funding for this is slightly different because for 24-25, we reprioritised the underspend on the growth fund. We wouldn't be doing that in 25-26. We would be top slicing to get this amount. Again, Falling Rolls is still obviously remains a pressure in the borough and nationally as well. The results of the consultation were largely in support of a Falling Rolls Fund. Only 12% of those 16 responses said no to a Falling Rolls Fund. The other responses, the other 90% was split between the three options. We gave three options for this. We said a Falling Rolls Fund at the level of 150,000, which had the most responses there, 43% in favour of that. We gave option 2 a Falling Rolls Fund at the level of 200,000. There was 31% in support of that. And then finally, option 3, a Falling Rolls Fund at the level of 250,000, and only 12% were in favour of that. But overall, 90% in favour of a Falling Rolls Fund. And just to remind you that the Falling Rolls Fund for the current year was 172,000. So options 1 and 2, 150 or 200 are sort of either side of the current one there.
Thank you, Mel. Any questions, queries on this? Sam, you've raised a hand.
I think Sam hasn't removed her hand from the. There she has.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries, Sam. So specifically on the Falling Rolls, any questions, queries or thoughts? Okay, we'll go to a vote. Given again the representative number and the sort of somewhat touchiness of this one, I think we're going to vote in 3 ways. So we'll go no, 150, 200, given the numbers that have come through. So those people who do not wish there to be a Falling Rolls Fund, mindful of the consultation, what we've done, please raise your hand. We do not want there to be one. Okay, so no responses there. Those in favour of supporting the 43.8% majority in the consultation with the Falling Rolls Fund at 150, please raise your hand.
That's 11 for.
Thank you. Anyone in favour of the £200,000, please raise your hands.
That's 1 for.
I think that's 2 there. Ian, is that you as well? Yeah, that's 2.
Yeah, could we go back to the previous one, because I got 11 and we've only got 12 people to vote. So
okay, so we've got 2.
Just to make sure I got the numbers right.
Yeah, I heard you. 2 people we've got who are saying 200,000. Those again that put for 150, please raise your hands again, please. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. That's 10. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone, and anyone who is abstaining from that.
There are no abstentions.
Thank you. Okay, and that takes us, to the last one, please, Mel.
Yeah, this one wasn't included as part of the consultation, but there is one more vote in this report, and that is on whether Schools Forum votes on whether they wish to top slice funding from the schools block to create a budget for trade union facilities time.
Rachel, question?
Got a question just to say that they did come to present at the primary head teachers, but there weren't big enough representation to take a vote on that evening. Not even during the day when they came, we didn't have enough representation in the primary heads.
So off the back of that, Rachel and I were speaking this morning, and what we think might be a sensible way forward on that to make sure that the union have the opportunity to be truly heard and everyone has the opportunity to respond is that my understanding is they are going to the secondary heads to present. Once they've done that, then we would like a sort of consultation document that lays out exactly what it is, because they're speaking to some primary and secondary heads, there's some confusion on de-delegated versus not. So Rachel and I are saying, as sort of chair and joint vice chairs, that we think perhaps the opportunity for them to be heard by secondary and then primary already, then send the consultation, then we can be a little more informed to make that vote at the next meeting. Would that seem okay? I think that's fair for all sides, that everyone has got the details down, we've all been able to respond to it, and then we can make a decision also after that as to whether this is the correct forum for that moving forward, because it does seem different in there. Lorraine first, and then Carol.
Yeah, I just had a request, really. I would appreciate understanding from the local authority, really, as the employer of our people, how this does or doesn't fit with the employee relations strategy and policy, because I think that's a side that is completely missing for me as to what the employers want. The people who employ our people, what are they looking for? Would they support this? Does it fit with their employee relations strategy, etc.? So for me, it's not only about what the head teachers are saying, but what the local authority wants as well, since they are the employer. And
Rachel,
maintain schools.
Rachel, are you responding to that question, or is it a separate thing?
Responding to that point. So not with any detail though. So apologies to anyone who wasn't at the last forum. I'm Rachel Howard. I'm covering Lucy Corpus's maternity leave as interim Chief Operating and Finance Officer at AFC. So that's a really valid point. We can take that away and maybe include that information when we consult with schools and make sure we've got that context around it. So that's fine.
That would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachel. Is there anything else, Lorraine? Because I think I might have cut you off by going to Rachel. I apologise.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think if we have that guidance, I think that completes the picture a bit better. I think we dismissed is probably too strong a word, but it was a very big number last time, so we weren't as thorough perhaps in our thinking about it. Now the number is perhaps more reasonable, potentially. I think that understanding why we're not doing it when everybody else is just very helpful. And also what the actual employers of our staff want us to do.
And I think that's where then having it all written down with clarity on the numbers really helps. This has come along a bit later, and I think I agree with you on that.
Also the history, why we are where we are, because deciding not to do it because we made a mistake and didn't budget for it in 2015, if that's what happened, and I know that people aren't really clear what happened, doesn't seem like a good reason to be doing it. I'd like a more robust reason for the decision.
Absolutely fair point. Carol, did you have a point next? Sorry.
No, I didn't. All I was doing was agreeing that it's a good idea to go back to the heads. That's
perfect. All. Thank you. Ian?
Sorry, I think you've answered it. I was just going to say, when we do the consultation, if we can see the numbers, because as Lorraine said, last time it was 300,000, which was like £6 per pupil or something, which seemed a crazy amount of money. And the 26 does seem more reasonable, but I think for heads to make a decision, it would help to see what impact that's going to have on their bottom line.
So we're agreeing then that following the presentation to primaries, there will now be a presentation to secondaries. Once that's happened, there will be a consultation that takes place that has in it the information around the exact amount of money, what the options are in terms of delegated versus de-delegated, and then bring that to the next forum. And then make a decision there. Is there anyone against that being our action? Okay, thank you. Then I don't think we need to vote on that one. So that was point 1.6. Rachel, we'll liaise with, I believe, the gentleman Paul Coles and just talk him through and say that's what we're doing to offer him that. So that was the 1.6 on the first part of the purpose of the report. Mel, was there anything else under item the budget?
No, that concludes that item. And as I said, we'll get more information from the DFE in the coming month or so. So we'll be updating at the next forum once we know more information.
Thank you so much. Any other questions on the budget 25-26 following those votes, colleagues? Okay. Other updates? Scott, Charis, Mel, Rachel? Okay. Good game's a fast game. 63 minutes. So thanks everyone. Those votes have gone through there. Obviously we'll feed back to primaries and secondaries. Date of the next meeting is another online meeting on the 21st of January. Thanks very much for coming along and have a lovely afternoon or evening. Thanks everyone. And thanks to all the work for officers that you've been doing as well. It's much appreciated. And thank you councillors for coming along. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Thanks. Bye.
Bye.